first thing I just want to go over is what is a variable. So in short, a variable is a number that you don't know. So in the past, if you didn't know a number, you would put a question mark. Now, as you get a little bit older, we don't do that anymore. If you don't know a number, now we give it a letter. So like X, Y, those two letters actually represent a number. You just don't know what the number is. So if you see here, like it's saying 8 plus N equals 12. As of right now, we don't know what N is. I mean, some of you could probably eyeball it and figure out what N equals to. But right now, we don't know what that N is. Because it's a number that we don't know, we give it a letter. This, I would like you to read on your own and just call me over if you have any questions. I will go over. So the 4 is called a coefficient number. That's because that 4 is attached to a letter. Whenever a number is attached to a letter, that number is called a coefficient number. The letter, once again, is the variable. And if a number does not have a letter attached to it, it's called a constant. For the most part, I'm just going to go over what a term is. So in this example right here, this is actually 3 terms. And I'll explain why it's 3. Whenever you have an expression is a bunch of numbers and letters with no equal sign. Whenever you have a bunch of numbers and letters with no equal sign, the plus or minus sign splits up the terms. Not multiplication, not division, but a plus or minus sign. So whenever you see a plus or minus sign, that's actually separating the terms. So because I see a plus between the 5x and the 6, I'm going to put a line going right through it like this. Because there's a minus sign in between the 6 and the 4x, I want to put a line, once again, right through it. I always try to make sure that the operation is in front of the number. And now you can see why this is a 3-term problem. This is your first term, second term, and third term. And then like terms are terms that have the same letter. So in this case, because the 5x and the negative 4x have the same letter, they're like terms. So in this problem here, right, I'm just going to show you 3 different ways. So you have 3 apples, 1, 2, 3, and then, you just got 2 more. Well, how many apples do you have? You have 5 apples, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Done. So 3 apples plus 2 apples is 5 apples. Once again, nothing hard about that. So now I'm going to be a little lazy. Now instead of apples, right, I'm just going to put the first letter, which is A. So it's going to be 3A plus 2A. That's how I got this. And 3A plus 2A is 5A. Done. That right there is algebra. Here, these are oranges. You have 3 oranges. And you take away 2 of them. You only have 1 orange left. Same thing here. 3 oranges. Minus 2 oranges is 1 orange. So now I'm going to be very lazy. Cross all this out and just keep the first letter of the word. And it's going to be 3O minus 2O. And 3O minus 2O is 1O. Just in the future, we try to avoid using O because it looks like a 0. And we try to avoid T's too because it looks like a plus sign. But in this example, right, oranges, we had the O. So the answer is 1O. This is where now hopefully everything kind of makes sense. So here, right, you have 3 apples and you have 2 oranges. Well, what do you have? And a lot of kids are like, I think we have 5 fruits. And then they're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And they're right, it doesn't. So then they think again, and then finally one kid's like, oh wait, I know what we have. We have 3 apples and 2 oranges. And they're correct. You cannot combine unlike terms. So you cannot compare an apple with an orange. So over here, 3 apples plus 2 oranges is literally 3 apples plus 2 oranges. You can't do anything with it because they're unlike terms. So in algebra, right, 3A plus 2O, because the letters are different. They're not like terms. You cannot combine them. You cannot do 3 plus 2. So you just got to leave it alone. And the answer is 3A plus 2O. Done. So in short, in order for you to combine the coefficient numbers, the letters have to be the same. This is for at least 7th grade. So here, we're going to transfer these pictures into letters. So once again, that's 3 apples, so 3A plus 2O. This is 2 oranges. Minus 2A plus 2O. The one thing I recommend you do, and I say do this automatically, but truthfully, you only need to do it when there's a minus sign. If they're all plus signs, you wouldn't have to do it, but I recommend doing it no matter what. And that is split up your terms. I said this earlier in the lesson. You split up your terms based on the plus and minus signs. So once again, I split this up because there's a plus sign. I split this up because there's a minus sign. I split this up because there's a plus sign. And in every scenario, I make sure the operation is in front of the number. You need to make sure the operation is in front of the number, not behind. And that makes it easier for you to know if the number is really technically a positive or a negative. So that 3a is a positive. That 2o is a positive. That negative 2a, right, is a negative. And that positive 2o is a positive, right? A lot of you would think this was a positive 2, but it's not. That minus sign, we're going to treat that like a negative. It makes our calculations much easier. From there, it doesn't really matter if you do the a's or the o's first. I go alphabetical order, but you don't even have to. So I'm going to do the a's first, though. 3a plus negative 2a. Notice how I said plus, though. I always add like terms. However, I always ask myself one important question. Are signs the same or different? So even though I said 3a plus negative 2, because signs are different, because one's a positive, one's a negative, I'm technically going to subtract. And 3 minus 2 is 1. And because the 3 has more players, it's a positive 1. So my answer is positive 1a. Done. Cross it off, cross it off. Now I move on to the oranges. With the oranges, it's 2o plus 2o. They're both positive, signs are the same, so I add. And it's 4o. But please understand, a plus or minus sign has to separate the terms. I need to separate 1a and 4o. So that 4, because it's positive, I'm putting a plus sign in front of it. If that 4 was a negative, I would have put a minus sign. But I need to put a plus or minus sign in between the terms to split them. And obviously, once again, if the answer was a positive, I put a plus sign. If the answer was a negative, I will put a minus sign. This is my final answer, 1a plus 4o. And if you look at the picture here, you'll see how they had the same thing. 1 apple plus 4 oranges. So hopefully you understand now about adding like terms. I'm going to just do one more with you, and then that's it. So we're going to skip this slide. You're going to do this one on your own. You can do it now or afterwards. It doesn't matter to me. But we're going to do this one. After this, we're done. Once again, if I see minus signs, I am doing this automatically. Split up your terms. Make sure the operation is in front of your number. And if you don't see a number in front of a letter, you always give it 1. Like, for example, see here, literally there is 1y. So because it doesn't have a number in front of it, I put a 1. So that's 3x, negative 3y, negative 8x, and negative 1y. Notice how I'm calling them negatives and not positives. I treat minus signs like negatives. So I'm going to write that actually above so we can use that later. Positive, negative, negative, and negative. So once again, it doesn't matter what letter you start with first. I'll do the 3x first. So the same letter would be this guy right here. And that's 3x plus negative 8x. Because signs are different, right? One's a positive, one's a negative. I'm subtracting. And 8 minus 3 is 5. And because the 8 has more players, it's actually a negative 5. And then I bring down the letter. So it's negative 5x. Gone and gone. And now I'll combine the y's. For the y's, right, they're both negative. So signs are the same. So I'm going to add, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So the answer is 4y. But this part matters, and please listen to what I'm saying. Because the negatives have more players. That's not 4, but negative 4. That means I have to put a minus sign in between the terms. Because the 4 was technically negative 4, I have to put a minus sign. If you wrote negative 5x plus 4y, please understand, the whole thing is wrong. Because you're saying that the 4y is positive, while in fact, it's actually a negative.